Opponents and others were arguing that we should let Detroit go bankrupt. We made a bet on American workers and the ingenuity of American companies, and today our auto industry is back on top of the world.
We refused to throw in the towel and do nothing. We refused to let Detroit go bankrupt. I bet on American workers and American ingenuity, and 3 years later, that bet is paying off in a big way.
Now, despite the fact the president campaigned on that very issue, that he saved the auto industry and he saved the city of Detroit, those words apparently mean nothing today because a judge has now ruled that the Motor City can proceed with its historic bankruptcy filing, cutting pensions for city workers and retirees. And while President Obama sits back and watches this all unfold, well, my next guest, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, he is taking action. He's traveling to Detroit to unveil a recovery plan for that city, and he's here to explain the efforts himself. Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, welcome back. Good to see you.
Glad to be with you, Sean.
Wasn't it bin Laden's dead and Detroit's alive, something to that effect? I remember hearing that quite often during the campaign. Didn't the president say that a lot?
That's right. If you like your car bailout, you can keep it, period.
Yeah.
So, no, I think really what we need to do is try something different. I mean, for 50 years, we've been trying government stimulus, trying to bail out cities that have gone bankrupt. But I think through bankruptcy, we ought to find a new way. So what I'm promoting is something called economic freedom zones. It's kind of similar to what Jack Kemp talked about when he talked about enterprise zones 20 years ago. But this is enterprise zones on steroids. This is a massive give back of money that's already yours. We're not going to take it from Houston to bail out Detroit. We're going to let Detroit keep their own money and let Detroit bail themselves out. But it's phenomenal how much money can be left in Detroit simply by lowering the taxes in Detroit.
All right, so you're creating, it's sort of like, all right, it's like Kemp's enterprise zones on steroids. I'll take that analogy because I looked over your plan. You're calling it the Freedom Plan. You're going to give eligible areas a reduction in individual and corporate tax rates, correct?
Yes. We're going to take the personal income tax and the corporate income tax down to 5%. We're going to get rid of the capital gains tax. We're going to bring the payroll tax down for the worker and for the employer. And we're going to reduce the red tape and let businesses thrive. We're also going to invite entrepreneurs from around the country and around the world who want to come to Detroit and make it like a mini Hong Kong. There's all kinds of great things you can do, and it's amazing how much money accumulates, not from other parts of the country, but just from Detroit's tax base. If you don't take it to Washington, you just leave it in Detroit to begin with.
And so you're saying you're going to reduce the personal tax liability to 5%. Can you do that? I mean, you're Senator Rand Paul. You're one senator, powerful as you might be. But how do you accomplish? I like the idea. I'm just asking, how do you accomplish that?
Well, if I were President Obama, I'd do it by edict. But because I'm just a senator, we'll have to pass it as legislation, and we'd have to get the president to sign it. But I can tell you right now, there's not a lot of enthusiasm for the traditional type of bailout. I don't think that will pass the House of Representatives. I think my plan, if Democrats would look at it honestly, could pass the House of Representatives, could pass the Senate. We could really do something good for Detroit. And I also have a motive in this for Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky has 20 counties that would apply for this. And we could help out a lot of people who are hurting in eastern Kentucky. Harlan, Hazard, Pikeville. The president's war on coal is really crippling the economy in my state. So I'd like to help Kentuckians, but I'd also like to help some of the big cities around the country.
So we just heard the president at the beginning of the segment say a couple of times, we refuse to throw in the towel. We refuse to let Detroit go bankrupt. Now Detroit's going bankrupt. And then he also accused others like Mitt Romney of wanting Detroit to go bankrupt. I mean, so a little bit of irony here. This is it's still his first year in his second term. Let me play an exchange, our own Ed Henry pressing Jay Carney about the president changing his position on this. And watch this exchange. It's pretty revealing.
Is the president going to let Detroit go bankrupt?
Ed, I think that happened a while ago.
Well, the judge today said,
as we said, Detroit's bankruptcy is something that needs to be resolved between the city and its creditors. What we have said and what we are doing is working to provide real, tangible economic development and opportunity with existing resources and public-private partnerships to support and accelerate Detroit's revitalization.
But didn't the president say in the campaign that it would be awful for Detroit to go bankrupt? He obviously helped the auto industry, got them back on their feet. That was a positive development, but it wasn't enough. And I thought in the campaign he said it would be horrible for Detroit to go bankrupt.
Well, I think that there is enormous hardship caused by some of the problems that have happened in Detroit, which is why this needs to be resolved between the city and its creditors. Our position on this is the same as it was prior to the judge's ruling and prior to or in the immediate aftermath of the declaration of bankruptcy.
All right, now they're claiming it's a city and their creditors, but the president said, and I repeat, and I quote, "We refuse to let Detroit go bankrupt."
Well, here's the problem, Sean, is that the way he would bail out Detroit is through a government stimulus. We had that once. Remember, there was $1 trillion stimulus under President Obama, and they estimated that it cost $400,000 per job. The difference is what I'm talking about is not where I pick the winners and losers, but the consumer does. So the tax money would go back to those who earned it. And it kind of incorporates what Milton Friedman always said, that nobody spends somebody else's money as wisely as they spend their own. Yeah. So I'm not going to pick out John Smith and say, you create a business. I'm going to say, John Smith, who has 10 welders, we're going to give you some of your tax money back, and maybe he'll hire 2 more welders.
Senator, I've been there. There are entire neighborhoods. You can get $1 homes on eBay there. And there's going to be some entrepreneur, if these initiatives were to go in effect, that would want to go in, take over neighborhoods, rebuild the city and businesses as well. Last question. Is part of this a lot of speculation you might run for president? There's been a lot of talk about Republicans and not having enough minority outreach. Is this part of a message maybe that you're sending, that the Republican Party needs to do this more?
Absolutely. I think we need to show that we care about people from every community, and we need to show up in every community. When you look at the red-blue map around the country, there's red everywhere in the countryside, in the rural, and the small towns, but it's all blue in the big cities. And I think we need to go in and compete for that vote. But it's also good for America to have big cities like Detroit that were once industrial engines. We need them thriving again. And I think our answers are better than theirs because, frankly, their answers haven't worked for 50 years.
All right, Senator, we're going to watch your progress there. Hope it goes through. I think it'd be a good plan. Certainly, I don't think the taxpayers can afford to bail them out. Appreciate you being with us.